dessert in the back, and we're about to get started. Everyone up here has been running. Oh, there's dessert up front too. So listen, I'm going to kind of rush along because we are very fortunate today to have not one, not two, not three, but 4 deans in the same place. And I've been here this is my 5th year. I've never seen that, you know, except for at an administrative meeting. But it's very rare here at Penn State to not, it's very rare for deans to come together and talk publicly about the things that are important for the university. So I'm just really grateful that they're here. Here's the problem. It's faculty orientation day. And so we really only have them for about 35 minutes. So if you don't mind, and I know that you're in line getting those tasty desserts, I look forward to that myself. I'd like to just go ahead and get started. Mark, can you, before you move to that slide, let me see what we're talking about today. Okay, so we're talking about diversity. Hold on, just give me a second. So we're talking about diversity. This morning, this afternoon, we're going to talk about the search process and how we do better, how we center equity in the search process. We talked a little bit about what happens after the hire, right? What happens to faculty? How can we be more welcoming, more equitable in the faculty experience throughout the career cycle? So that's been the conversation so far. What I want to do now is kind of build on that and talk about how do we get faculty to stay here? And I'm not really going to use the word retention because I'm not sure that we've actually defined that. What I'm really most concerned about is how do we create a university where when people want to stay, we have reasons for them to stay, right? And so what I'm going to put up here, if Mark will go. So the first slide up here is just everyone who's up here on the panel. And I put that up there to save us time so that you can see who's at the table. But I will ask you just very briefly, there are mics in front of you, to just introduce yourself as Mark moves on to the next slide. Craig, would you start?
Hi, everybody. Craig Newschaffer, Dean of the College of Health and Human Development.
I'm Tracy Langkilde. I'm the Dean of the Eberly College of Science.
I'm Kim Lawless. I have a PhD in instructional technology and can't turn on a microphone. I'm the Dean of the College of Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. Clarence Lane, Dean of the College of the Liberal Arts. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm one of those individuals who's over service. So when I jump off and start running, I'm not running from the conversation. I have a faculty orientation that I'm playing hooky from. That's all.
So we'll try to move very, very, very quickly here. Again, it's a conversation about diversity, but we want to be very specific. If you've been paying attention to the news around Penn State, you know, for the past year, we've seen things in the paper about underrepresented racial ethnic minorities, right? But we really want to talk about minority groups more broadly and why they may choose to leave when they initially chose to come to Penn State, right? And so much of what we have about, or at least much of what we hear, is anecdotal information, right, about faculty departures, faculty retention. And the university really has to move away from that. And I think Tracy Langkilde is kind of working on some things, am I right, with faculty affairs around that. So what you have up here is data, and unfortunately, I don't think the deans can see the data. Can't see that one. And this is not a conversation about data. This is actually data that's sitting in a report that is on the educational equity website right now, and it's a special advisor report on institutional equity to the president. And I'm the author. So I don't want to talk about the data, but you can go there and see a lot more. But the point I want to make is I just want you to take a look at that snapshot up in the corner, right? Because I think there are assumptions about who leaves. And frankly, everyone leaves, right? But we do see some groups leaving, you know, at higher rates than others, right? So that's what we want to pay attention to. And then the other thing is, why do they leave? So one of the things that I did when I collected data for this special advisor report was I asked deans, why from your understanding, why are faculty leaving? Now, that's not the only way we can collect information. That was just the fastest way I could collect the information for this report that I had to do. And certainly, deans' understandings of departures are actually critical, right? Because they're the ones who are working to retain faculty. So they actually do know quite a bit why faculty are choosing to stay or choosing to go. And so this is what we're finding. The assumption for the past year is that, well, people are leaving, like Black people are leaving because they're Black, right? I'm not suggesting that that's not part of departure decisions. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I want us to pay attention to are all the reasons that people are saying that they're exiting. And then I'm going to ask the deans to help us think about what we can do differently as an institution and what deans are doing or can do, right, to make this a place where people absolutely want to stay. Now, I'll confess, this is my 5th institution. I don't think anyone here has the answer. So, but it is important to ask that question, right? So I won't read the data. I'll let it sit there. And then I guess I'll start with Craig, if you don't mind, since you're sitting closer to me. Can you help us to, if we look at the data, right? And it's clearly it's not about a particular academic unit, right? It's not about the hub, right? It's not about any particular thing. What is it when you look at the data that you would say institutions could do, right? Because there's a could and a should, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. And I think if I'm remembering from the prompt that you sent us, one of the things that you want us to think about as well are areas where, from our vantage point, we think the university level is sort of the locus of responsibility, or we're all responsible, but initiatives and energy sort of has to emanate there, as opposed to things that not that we shouldn't be doing things, and there are plenty of things in our college that we need to do related to some of the topics that you talked about this morning and in the afternoon, and we're trying to borrow some practices that have been successful in places like Kim's College and Tracy's College, and we have to do that work. But reflecting on this data and thinking also about where the university can and should play a more active role, I've got 2 thoughts. One is related to the data itself, because while it's true, I think that deans do have some understanding of what drives faculty, I also think that understanding is shaped through forces that might not give us a complete picture. And I think that the exit interview process that we have, I know in our college, it has not been robust, and we have not gotten great participation. And I think the sort of federated way that it works right now, where we're responsible for exit interview officers and we sort of appoint them and we manage that, is not the best way of doing it. I think if that were done centrally, where faculty felt that process was a little bit removed from the people that they had been working with day to day for a number of years, we might get better and more systematic data. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing I'll react to too is that I think in the area of, I think there are examples where the way the university interfaces with the community, that's another place where I think a lot of the energy and initiative has to come from a university level. I think there are ways where the colleges can support it. Like, for example, there's the schools, public schools are mentioned, and I'm sure Kim has lots of thoughts on how their college could support more robust partnerships between the university and the school district around these issues. But I think that the impact will be greater if it's begun at the university. And similarly, we hear reports. We just had a report from a couple of weeks ago of students from minoritized backgrounds who were not treated very well in a local restaurant. And we have people in hospitality who work on equity and inclusion in that area and can provide some expertise for our local community. But I think to have the momentum for the local community to be receptive from it, the push is going to have to come from the university level. So I'll pause there.
Anyone else?
Well, I'll go next and just sort of ditto what Craig said. So some of this is about people's identities, but not in ways that are simple. So the issue around the school district, I've lived in a number of different communities, and I've not lived in one where being a parent of color has not played into the quality of life in terms of whether it's private schools, whether there's public schools, you're having to intervene. So to the extent, and I want to be careful about how I say this, because it's easy perhaps for me to say this, but the universities, for example, relationship to the school districts, I think becomes important. I don't know what those initiatives could look like. I'm happy to yield to Kim on that, but that's certainly a dynamic. One thing that I'll add is as well, and this is sort of what the data tells, but also experiential as well. But this idea of how does the university, particularly if we're talking about people of color, how does the institution accommodate dual career couples is really important, because we've lost some folks, certainly in my college, in part because of the difficulty of finding or being able or having spouses find opportunities, whether they're academics and particularly if they're not academics, opportunities for employment in the community. And we've lost some people from that standpoint as well, thinking about how they build dual career couples. And certainly, and this is where I would say I don't know all of the facts and figures, but if we think about the employment structure and opportunities in local communities, those kinds of things make a difference. I want to be clear that there are things that deans can do, but I think to the extent that the institution can help shepherd the nuances of how you create an environment where dual career couples, particularly, but not exclusively, dual career couples can both have meaningful opportunities in the community, whether that's at the institution or whether that's in the broader surrounding community, I think becomes very, very key. And then there's a third that I'll mention, and the only way we counteract that is through community building activities. But my college, and I'll speak only for my college, we lost some individuals because they simply, coming out of the pandemic, jumped at opportunities to be closer to family networks, particularly individuals coming from the South. I don't want to fixate on that particular region, but there are some individuals who, this institution puts me closer to family networks. I have young children. They haven't seen their grandparents, in some cases, ever in the context of this, and this is an opportunity to get closer. The easy response to that is, well, there's nothing we can do about that. And to some extent, we can't. But then the question becomes, how are we building community, I'll use that word in a broader way, to offset the kinds of connections that clearly people are not feeling here, where family becomes really, really important.
I think this one's on now. Correct? Is it on? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So this is a big question. And I could probably take several hours to start addressing issues that we can tackle together. But the key phrase in that last sentence is tackle together. Our experience is the predominant reason why people leave from our college, that they like Penn State. They like the College of Education. There are things that can be fixed and we can work on them and move forward. It is the community and it is the schools, right? When you are the parent of a Black child and your child sits in the corner because they don't have any friends, or they don't have anybody to eat lunch with, or they are invisible because programs do not recognize their race, or when they are racially profiled in the schools, those incidents go under acknowledged, right? Yes, that's a problem with the schools. Yes, the College of Education is working across multiple sectors to address those issues. But in reality, it is each and every one of you, your community members, your children are in the schools. We have to stop being silent. You want things to change, we have to all roll up our sleeves and change them. We've learned in this grand experiment of a democracy that we call America, that if we wait for the government to legislate change, it's not going to happen. Well, we're a microcosm. The university is a microcosm of America. If we wait for the president and the university to turn this Titanic of a ship in a direction, we're going to be waiting a long time. But if we all lean into that ship and we all push in the direction that we want to see for a better Penn State, then the captain of that ship has an easier time steering it because they're not steering it alone. So I need to be very honest. We change, the community changes. We have to disrupt. We have to take responsibility. We have to take accountability. All of us. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's a great segue to thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules during an incredibly busy week to be here and be part of the solution and helping us work together to be able to address this. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about retention. Jennifer had mentioned that we're doing some work as a university to learn more and understand more about why we lose our faculty. I think also understanding why we keep our faculty. And I think as deans, sometimes we get some insight into that. If we have a faculty that comes forward and has an offer from somewhere else, we can get a little bit of a sense of, like, are you looking for money? Are you looking for space? Are you looking for recognition? Or is this bigger than anything that we can fix here? So paying more attention to why we don't lose faculty. Or I really liked what you said, Jennifer, about faculty that they chose Penn State and then they're choosing to go somewhere else. I think that's a really important point. Like, why did they choose Penn State in the first place? And then why did they choose to leave? And sometimes it's for wonderful reasons that we should all celebrate. Right? Sometimes they have found incredible promotional opportunities to be leaders of universities or leaders of colleges. But sometimes it's so the pull reasons are really great. The push reasons are the ones that we need to pay attention to. And I don't know that, like Craig said, I don't know that we have a real understanding. I mean, we have kind of what they might have shared with people formally. We have the kind of rumor mill about why people left, but we need to do some more digging and try and really understand why our faculty leave and why our faculty stay. And we're a community of campuses. And I think those reasons and how we address them differ depending on the geographical location that we're talking about. So really learning from each other and understanding what we can learn from campuses that are doing some things in a particularly right way could be really important.
I mean, it's true. I think I learned in my project, we have a data deficit. We have a lot of data and some of it tells us very little. And then we have very little in terms of the faculty experience. And when we look at the data that we do have in terms of the university-wide exit data, we find that white exiting faculty are more likely to respond than those of color. So it's just simply a deficit, but I think it is something, a work in progress. I think I'm someone who looks to institutional leadership at the very top to take leadership. And so, and I don't disagree with Dean Lawless at all. All of us in this room have a part to play. And many of us in this room probably already play that part. But I do think a university the size of Penn State has a huge footprint. And it actually can make some demands, put some pressure, have some expectations of our various localities. In many of those localities, we are the major employer. And so I think we do a great job about talking about diversity. It's the doing it where we really get stuck and assume it's just ultra hard. I just don't believe it. And I do think that our institutional leaders, and that includes deans, but it is not just deans. I don't think we hear enough from deans. So I guess I would say, and I used to organize faculty. I do think that there's space to have some expectations of our upper administrators, provost and president's offices. I had a couple of questions, but we seriously only have like 5 or 6 minutes. And so I kind of want to give some time to the audience because they did take the time out of their day and they're not often going to get 4 of you here together. Are there any questions? You can ask them anything. They don't have to answer, but no, I'm sorry. But you can ask them anything. They were here to talk about something very specific. Okay. Hands in the air. Leanne, oh, Corrali, several hands.
I don't want to be the only question, but. So I guess the question is, I've been thinking a lot about, so first of all, thank you all for coming. I appreciate the time you're taking out of your day. I've been thinking a lot about the partnership between where I am, which is the unit head, department head kind of place, and the dean's office. And I guess the question for you is, what sorts of things can department heads do to help as a partnership us get in a better place in terms of this retention or even recruitment?
So I should start by answering that question because Leanne reports to me. So I think that's that's probably appropriate. So Leanne, I think you have the answer to that question, and there are things that you've done. So we won't talk about individuals specifically, but you had a mid-career faculty member of color who had a really wonderful opportunity with a foundation. This is not work that the university or our college or your department have typically done. So there weren't blueprints for how we would make some kind of a relationship work, but you brought that to me, right? And we both leaned in, and I credit you for your work on that. And we've worked, right, with the Provost's office to figure out some kind of a way in the interest of retaining a valuable faculty member of color, but who is a valuable faculty member in all these kinds of senses. And so it's just taking advantage of these opportunities to do things that may be unconventional, but actually could yield something for that individual, but also what gives us templates for how we do that in other situations. So if this particular thing that we've worked on pans out, that becomes opportunities for others to take advantage of, not just in your department, but these become sort of ready-made, if you will, models for how we do some things. Now, of course, we have to color within the lines. University policies exist for a reason. So we have to have some guardrails to this. But within that, we're discovering, aren't we, that there's a lot that we can do. But it could have been simple to say, we don't do that here at Penn State, right? We don't do that, right? And then it could have ended there. So I think sort of creativity and recognizing when opportunities occur, and that the opportunities are not just about individuals, but it helps us to establish some patterns of how we do things overall, I think becomes really important from the standpoint, in this case, of faculty development, career development over the longer term, which will make people want to stay, right, for longer. So that's my response.
Sure. I think I want to resonate very deeply with the creativity, right? The moment you say the words, we can't do that, the first question out of your mouth should be, why? Or why do we do it that way, right? Challenge those assumptions that underlie the very things we do every day and try to figure out if it's just folklore, which a lot of the time it is. And then push to innovate, even if it's in your own little space, your own day-to-day work, your work in the department, your work in the college. I think that's really important. But I think the biggest thing we can all do across Penn State, whether it's someone in our immediate community, meaning our program or our department, or the broader college or the broader university, is proactively reach out and get to know people, build relationships. What holds people to an institution isn't the money that an institution has. It's not even necessarily the location of the institution. It's the collegial relationships that are built, because through those relationships, all of our work gets more impactful, right? We inspire one another with what we're doing in our classes, or we create a new avenue to think about research that wasn't previously discovered. Those are the things, those relationships in Penn State and outside of Penn State that create the stickiness. Nobody wants to leave a place where they're a member of a community. So I think we have to be both proactive and reactive.
So in our earlier conversation, we kind of talked about the informal and formal ways that we invite faculty to campus and or to the university and support them on throughout their careers. And certainly one of the issues here that I've seen in multiple roles is that building community is actually a challenge here at Penn State. First of all, we have 24 campuses, that's one. But even on, let's say, a university park, a very large campus, people are sort of isolated in their respective places. And so, and I know I've been at other institutions where part of my task was building community. And it's actually been a struggle here. So I mean, it's easy to say community, but I think it's easier for, I completely agree. That's what we need. Every institution, every organization needs one. I just don't know how we do it better here without having something at varying levels that people can connect to. So something at a provost president office level, something at the college level, something at the departmental level that connects people not only to the institution, but to the living communities that they're in. So I actually have some great ideas, but it's the dean's time.
Yeah, and your ideas may be better than mine, but actually I think
Oh, no, I'm
I
sure
actually
they're
think
not.
this idea probably connects with one of your ideas, and I know that this is something that Wendy and Deb have thought a lot about, but it relates to trying to create more opportunities for community, and this is the idea of thinking about of cohort hiring initiatives, and I think that that's another opportunity to sure it's going to be somewhat limited in scope. Perhaps it'll be around a particular, grand problem or challenge where faculty who have diverse areas of expertise might work together on this challenge across different colleges, across different units, but they'll be united in some way in this mission, and we can scaffold on some intentional efforts to try to really emphasize that sense of community among these faculty who are brought in together. And inclusive excellence could be one of those threads. And I think I know we've trying to do this, and I think in our college we'd like to try to do more of this at the college level. But I think it's a tool that universities certainly have implemented with success, and I think Penn State, there's no reason why we can't do more of it.
Yeah, there's plenty to do, I think is the thing. Another hand?
Yes, right here. So I said this kind of jokingly this morning that I'm in a school of about 45, and given that there are only 2 Black faculty in my school are here today, I said, well, there's not going to be any Black faculty in our school meeting today. But I also say that I'm the only tenured Black faculty member in that particular school. So is it up to me as the faculty member to make the case that I'm isolated? I moved from being visible to hyper visible. How do I make that case? Or should there be some type of awareness that this is something that we need to address? It shouldn't be up to the faculty member to continue to try to make that case.
No, it is not your responsibility to say, hey, I'm isolated. One of the things we did in the College of Education that was incredibly impactful is the entire academic leadership team went through a year-plus long professional development series on anti-racist leadership, which also then opens up all DEI and inclusion, because it's about unpacking your socialized identity and being able to hear and respond, knowing that there are different lenses and different experiences that are being brought to you that you might not have had yourself. And that has opened up the door to finding those, to looking, where are people isolated? Where are people not connecting? How can we create structures and bandwidth to support those structures in ways that move people forward into that community? So with that, we've also created, and I think there's something similar to it at the university level, equity fellows, realizing that bandwidth is a huge problem for faculty, and all faculty are like, I can't take any more time to do anymore. And we have this new bold strategic plan, and we've got to get this community building. People apply, we give them course releases to create space, to purposefully and intentionally create these activities and spaces so that our units and our colleges can move forward. So there are things that can be done inside units, but leaders have to realize that they have to intentionally move through their space to see what the needs are from lenses other than predominantly at Penn State their own.
That's a really good point. Is there one more question out there before we let the Corrali? Oh, Tracy.
In one of my roles, I help with the Faculty Fellows Program at SSRI. And one of the things I've noticed is that, of course, because of the Institute model, we're looking for interdisciplinarity, crossing lines. And so I'm meeting sometimes with junior faculty who are interdisciplinary. Sometimes they have multiple affiliations across departments, across colleges. And I'm thinking back to when I was a junior faculty, it was hard enough navigating one department or one college. they're navigating multiple departments and multiple colleges. And sometimes I get a sense from them that they feel, rather than feeling they have multiple homes, they feel like they're homeless because they're not quite sure which push or which pull to listen to first. So I'm wondering, in terms of mentoring faculty that are crossing across these traditional lines of department to college in the promotion process.
Dean Langkilde, Dean Langkilde.
I need to say something, so I will say something and then hand it over to Clarence because they spoke about it the other day. I think this is a really important conversation, both for co-hires and co-appointments, but also for service. I know that often leadership, whether it's president, provost, deans, chancellors, will reach out to people and ask if they can be parts of task forces or communities. And we don't always let department heads and others know that we're doing this. And so these people get, I think, tapped from multiple places, and we are not making the space for them. So we need to do a better job of communicating as well. So I think mentoring the faculty, Clarence, I'll let you speak to that, but I think making sure that the leadership is on the same page so that we know what we're asking of our faculty and we're not putting it all on them to be able to navigate.
I'm actually going to punt a little bit on that. What I was saying over here is that we were all at an academic leadership council meeting earlier this week, and interdisciplinary faculty and ideas about how supporting that was a topic of conversation. So I don't have a good answer to that, but there is a recognition that we have to do differently and better. I would say humbly two things. One, and this is more sort of bureaucratic, so forgive me for this, but I think MOUs, so that people have clarity about what they're supposed to do, when and where. That's always my concern, that people not knowing, who they're accountable to and when, and if we're talking about tenure and promotion, what have you, the havoc that can cause. I think mentoring, I don't have a good answer for that, but I will take the opportunity to say, adjacent to that, I think this is connected, and this is maybe somewhat controversial, so I'm going to leave after I say this, in case there are boos, but it's been my observation that particularly those folks who came in during the pandemic have had a very particularly difficult time. And my hope is that we certainly have technology that allows us to do things in hybrid kinds of manners. And you were saying this even in the pandemic, and you've turned out, I think, to be correct. There's no replacement, if we're serious about community building, than people being together physically, because I think we will have a difficult time over the long term. And I've seen it, retaining people over the longer term who have not had any real meaningful, sustained connection with others. That makes them, in my view, extremely poachable. And so part of what makes people stay is that they're connected to others. And we've talked about all the ways that that's difficult and how we have to do that. But I think one very easy way, if you're a department head or if you run a unit or what have you, right, really think about how you're bringing people together. And yes, it's easy to have meetings via Zoom, but that may not be for the longer term the best way if you're thinking about keeping people over the longer term. I know that sets some people off. So there, I said it, and I'm leaving now. So.
And he hands the microphone to me, who brought this up in the middle of the pandemic. Like, yeah. I do think community